So yeah, this thing is pretty amazing. I mean, it's like the Steam Deck and the PSP fell in love, got married. 9 months later, the GPD Win 4 popped out. What's going on, everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today I am super excited because I finally got my hands on the GPD Win 4. Now this is something I've been looking forward to, and I know a lot of you have also. But if you're not familiar with this device, basically what we have here is the world's smallest Ryzen 7 6800U powered handheld gaming device. Now obviously they took a lot of inspiration from one of the best handhelds ever made, and I'm sure a lot of you already know exactly what that is, but don't let the size fool you because this thing is putting out some really great performance. Now, even though we've got such a small form factor handheld, they didn't have to compromise on the power that the 6800U can put out with that new Radeon 680M RDNA2 based iGPU. The cooling system they implemented here is absolutely amazing for the size, and like I mentioned, it did take a lot from some of the best handhelds that were ever released on the market, the PSP and the PS Vita. We've got more of a PSP design here, but there are some cues from the PS Vita. Like the D-pad itself, it's actually using the same one that the Vita uses, and I'm a huge fan of this one. It uses dome switches underneath, and I've always liked it for fighting games and platformers. I found it really accurate. We've got the same exact feel here. By the end of the video, we will do some D-pad testing with some fighting games just to show you how good it does work on this unit. But it's really hard to believe how much tech they've packed into this small form factor here with the Win 4. Like the fact that we've got a backlit full QWERTY keyboard under the 6-inch display. And by the way, this is using an HIPS display. And personally, I think it looks absolutely amazing. But one of my favorite things about this is we've actually got a couple modes that we can swap through when it comes to the refresh rate. We've got 40 Hz, 60 Hz, and recently it's come to my knowledge that we've even got a 75 Hz mode, but that'll only work at 1080p. 40 and 60 will work at basically any resolution. Now before we get into it, I did want to give you a quick size comparison between the Steam Deck, the most popular x86 handheld on the market right now, and the new GPD Win 4. As you can see, the Win 4 is coming in a lot smaller than the Steam Deck, and they do consider this a pocketable device. It does have the analog sticks coming right out of the front here, but yeah, I mean, it does fit in my pocket. Even when I'm wearing jeans, I can actually slide this thing right in there. And of course, it does have a smaller screen than the Steam Deck. The Win 4 is coming in at 6 inches, the Steam Deck is at 7, but the Win 4 screen is far superior to the Steam Deck screen that they're using right now, even in the 512GB model. Now taking a look at the overall design, like I mentioned, we've got that Vita D-pad, so it is using those dome switches behind it. Always like these, it feels great on this unit. And we've also got our analog stick over here. Now instead of using Hall-based analog sticks like we've seen in some of the newer handhelds on the market, these are using the ALPS or the ALPS 3D analog sticks. And I've been using these for years in all of my controllers, and personally, I love them. They work great. Moving down just a bit, we've got a switch here that we've seen on previous GPD devices. Basically, we can swap between controller mode and mouse mode, so we can actually use the built-in controls as a mouse. But when it's time to game, all we need to do is flick this switch, and everything's going to detect these controls as an X input device, so it'll work with 99.99% of everything that you can run on this device. And as you can see, we've also got a micro SD card slot over here. This is good up to 2 terabytes, and it's using a UHS-1 interface, so it'll do 160 megabytes read, and it'll do 90 megabytes write, so we can get a really fast card for this unit. Now moving over to the right-hand side, obviously we've got our ABXY, we've got our other analog stick, and right under that analog stick, we've got a little touch sensor. Now this isn't a fingerprint sensor. This is actually an optical finger navigation sensor, so think of it as kind of a trackpad, and it works out a lot better than I thought it would. It definitely works better than the nubs on the older Lenovo laptops. This was actually something I was surprised to see, and it's actually great to see that we've got a bunch of different ways that we can navigate this handheld. And keep in mind, we've also got that touch screen, so if you just wanted to use the touch screen to navigate the operating system, no problem at all. And of course, up top here, we had to talk about the bumpers and the triggers. As you can see behind the bumpers, we do have some RGB, which really does set it off. And these are linear triggers with 27 degrees of movement. This is great for racing games, and I will show this off because I actually really like the way these things feel. And finally, across the top here, as you can see, we've got a 3.5mm audio jack, a full-size USB 3.2 port, which is something that I personally think is a must on a handheld. We've also got USB 4 up top, and this is using 40 gig protocol, so an eGPU does work with this handheld quite well. And of course, we've got our volume rocker and our power button. These are physical buttons up top. And they've given us another USB Type-C port here at the bottom. This is actually USB Type-C 3.2. It's full function, 10 gigs, and it will support video out. And around back, we've got 2 extra remappable buttons. You can do this from software, but just taking a look at the back, we've got a lot of ventilation. You can see that fan, and I've already mentioned it, but the cooling system that they've implemented in this handheld is really awesome. The stock TDP is 15 watts. They consider gaming mode around 28, but I've been doing some testing at 32 and still haven't hit thermal throttle with it. And that was the main thing I was worried about, given that this is such a small form factor unit. We've got a full-fledged Ryzen 7 6800U that didn't have to be dumbed down in this unit because we've got a sufficient cooling system. And of course, I mean, there's a lot more to it. If you want to head over to the Indiegogo, I'll leave some links in the description. I'll also leave a link to their website. But basic specs here, we've got the Ryzen 7 6800U. This is based on Zen 3 Plus. We've got 8 cores, 16 threads, and a boost clock up to 4.7 gigahertz. Along with this, we get the Radeon 680M iGPU. This is based on RDNA2 with 12 compute units, and it runs at up to 2200 megahertz. They do offer a couple different RAM and storage variants. You can go with 16 gigabytes of RAM or 32, but all of them are using LPDDR5 running at 6400 megahertz, and they've set this up so it's actually running a quad channel configuration with that LPDDR5. The out-of-the-box storage configurations are either 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte, but this is using an M.2 SSD, PCIe 4.0 speeds, plus we've got that micro SD card. So, I mean, if you wanted to replace this M.2, you definitely could, or just add storage with that micro SD. As you've seen, the display in the Win 4 looks great. We've got a 6-inch HIPS. We've got a resolution of 1080p. It's got an aspect ratio of 16:9. And we can swap between 40 or 60 hertz. And now at 1080p, we can actually go up to 75, but you're not going to be wanting to do this with AAA games. Indie stuff, it should work out great, but having that 40 and 60 hertz mode is really awesome. Now, in the past on different handhelds, we could always use a third-party application to kind of achieve this, but directly from Windows, we can actually swap between 40 and 60. And with those harder to run AAA games, 40 hertz is great on this display. And you know, when it comes to these handhelds, I think some of these manufacturers do overlook the sound, but this thing has some amazing little speakers in it. I'm actually blown away by how loud and clear this thing gets. These are the loudest and clearest speakers that I've heard out of any x86 handheld on the market right now. They're using double AC super linear dual stereo speakers here, and it's pretty awesome to hear this thing at full volume. I mean, I actually had to turn it down when I was recording because it was just overpowering. This also has a 6-axis gyro built in. We've got vibration motors, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and when it comes to the battery, we've got a 45.62 watt-hour battery with 65-watt fast charging capabilities. It does come with a 65-watt charger in the box. Okay, so I wanted to jump right into some gameplay here, and we've got Forza Horizon 5. I've got it locked at 60 hertz here on the display and from the game itself, and we're at 15 watts. 720p medium settings, and I've also got the total system power draw from the battery listed here with Afterburner. We're right there at around 28 watts, so we're on par with what the Steam Deck pulls at 15 watts. And I also wanted to show you these linear triggers. I'm a huge fan of racing games, be it arcade racers or simulators, and having these linear triggers really does help out, especially with drifting, to get that control out of the brake and the gas. And I'm not sure how well the speakers are going to transfer in a YouTube video. I'm at about 60% volume here, and it is really loud. And I'm actually really happy that they're front facing. GPD has done a bang up job with the screen and the sound on this handheld so far. But right now, like I mentioned, 720p, locked at 60, medium settings, we're good to go. And just because we're here, I figured we'd go ahead and take it up to 28 watts. I went to 1080p with this game, still at medium, with VSync turned completely off. And keep in mind, I'm not using FSR right now. We could get around 90 FPS with some FSR set to around balanced, but we're averaging 75 FPS, medium 1080p, 28 watts. As you see, our total system power draw has significantly jumped up. We're going to get right under an hour of gameplay out of this at 28 watts playing this game like it is right now. But at 15 watts, locked at 60, we're going to get right under 2 hours of gameplay, which isn't bad at all given that we're pushing this much power out of a super tiny handheld. So obviously we've got a very portable device here, but we've got a lot of power with it. So if you wanted to use this as a PC, you could. Now you could connect it to a larger display if you want, or you could use it with the built-in 6-inch display. In mouse mode, we can use this right analog stick for our cursor, and a few of these buttons are going to work as our right click and left click. We've also got the touch screen, so you could use it like this, but personally, I really like this optical trackpad that they've used. Now, it does take a little bit of getting used to, and it is kind of sensitive. I mean, we could always change the sensitivity from Windows settings, but the way it's set up out of the box, it's very usable. I mean, I really do like this, and this is actually how I've been using the unit. Plus, we've got that built-in QWERTY keyboard, and it is backlit. We can actually turn the backlight off if we want to, and it's using dome switches, kind of just like the D-pad does. I do like the keyboard on the Win 4 a lot more than the Win 3, and you know, when it came to the Win 3, I never really went to the keyboard because I just wasn't a huge fan of it. But with this, it's actually really easy to use. I mean, you want to search the web with it, you want to search through your game library, not a problem at all, and we can always close this screen down, get rid of that keyboard altogether. Now, I will admit, I wouldn't want to type up an essay or something like that with this QWERTY keyboard, but you know, for little stuff, it actually works out great. Even taking notes, this is something I've been using because it is built into the handheld. Next thing I wanted to do was show you this D-pad in action. So we've got Street Fighter V 1080p with a low medium mix at 15 watts. We can go to full medium with it at 1080 at about 20 watts, but we're just right there at 15. And pulling off these special moves is no problem at all with this Vita D-pad. I've always really liked the Vita D-pad for fighting games. I mean, the Vita itself had some really great stuff come out, and you know, even playing platformers with this, very accurate. I mean, if you just need to hit that up and right, you can always do it. And since this utilizes dome switches, we can actually feel when we're in the right position. Now it's time to turn our attention to the 40 Hz mode that this display offers. Now when it comes to God of War, this is a hard game to run on any APU that's on the market right now, and of course this will run at 60 FPS, but you need to be at about 35 to 38 watts, and you're going to be at low settings. Battery life isn't going to be great, but with that 40 Hz mode turned on with the display, we're at 15 watts, original settings, 720p, locked at 40 FPS. The game still feels really smooth here because we're matching the refresh rate of the display, and it looks great at 720p given that we have this 6-inch HIPS display. So that 40 Hz mode really does come in handy with these harder to run AAA games when you want to get better battery life. But if you're not worried about battery life, or you've got a power source close to you, we can go up to 28 watts here, Cyberpunk 2077, 720p, Steam Deck presets, locked at 60. So we're playing Cyberpunk on a mobile handheld here at 60 FPS. I mean, this is really awesome. And remember, I mean, we're only at 28 watts here. I've been doing some testing at 35, and this will help out with performance because you're going to get better clocks on the CPU and GPU. But again, battery life is going to be a big factor when taking the TDP up that high. Another one I always like to test is Injustice 2, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you've been messing around with the screen refresh rate from 40 to 60, when you go to a fighting game, make sure you turn it back to 60. For about 2 minutes playing this game, I was at 40, I couldn't figure out why. But right now, we're at 1080p, 15 watts with a low-medium mix, and this runs great on the 6800U. High on Life is one of those games that actually can run at 60 FPS on the 6800U, but just like a lot of this AAA stuff, we have to take that wattage up. So again, a game like this, that 40 Hz mode is going to come in really handy. We've got a low-medium mix, locked at 40, and this is one of those games you can have a lot of fun with on this handheld. Next up, we've got Spiderman Miles Morales. Again, we've got that 40 Hz mode turned on, but we're at 28 watts and we've got a low-medium mix. This game can run at 60 on the 6800U with higher wattage, but at 28, 40 Hz, it still looks great and plays just fine on the GPD Win 4. And the final PC game I wanted to test for this first look video was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. I'm just using the recommended settings. I let it pre-configure itself and we're at 28 watts. With it set up like this, we got an average of 103 FPS. But of course, I also wanted to test this at 15 watts, so we're using the same exact recommended settings. I've just taken the TDP down to 15, and we got an average of 75 with the benchmark. So yeah, I mean, we could definitely get much better battery life at 15 watts and it would be fully playable. Okay, first impressions here with the GPD Win 4. I love the form factor. It is a smaller handheld. Some people aren't going to be into this, but I think the screen size is perfect, coming in at 6 inches. Beautiful screen, by the way. I mean, I have to say it again. We've got amazing viewing angles with this HIPS display. Having that swappable refresh rate on the screen itself is definitely a big plus, and I think we're going to see this more in the future with different handhelds. And one thing I'd actually love to see is just kind of a full variable refresh rate or even a FreeSync display in these handhelds. Like I mentioned, these are the cleanest and loudest speakers that I've heard from an x86 handheld, and I really wish more manufacturers would kind of jump on something like this. It's really awesome to see this, and it's something that a lot of manufacturers I think overlook. But the sound on this is absolutely awesome. Now, I definitely want to spend a little more time with this, but I've got a couple more videos planned. We're definitely going to be doing a full emulation video. I want to run Linux on this. Checking out Steam Deck OS would be pretty awesome. And I would also love to do a dedicated eGPU video with the Win 4. So if there's a specific GPU you want to see running on this over USB 4, let me know in the comments below. I've got a bunch of NVIDIA and AMD to choose from. But we've got that 40 gig protocol USB 4, so it'll match the speed of a Thunderbolt 3 or a Thunderbolt 4 dock, and I think we can get some really great performance out of this with the correct GPU. Now, battery life with the Win 4 can definitely be all over the place depending on what kind of games you're playing, the TDP you're set at, if you're locked at 40 or 60 Hertz. But on average at 15 watts, I mean, total system power draw here is right on par with the Steam Deck, so we can kind of get around 2 hours of gameplay out of this at 15 watts, 60 Hertz. And of course, at 28 watts, 60 Hertz, you're going to be looking at about an hour of gameplay out of this battery here. Now, going with indie stuff that doesn't need to pull so much wattage, you could net up to 4 to 5 hours of gameplay depending on what you're running. It really depends on how hard you need to work that APU and how much is going to be pulled from that battery. But if you're really interested in checking that kind of stuff out, definitely check out the Fox's video. It's either up now or it's going to be up very soon. I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel in the description. He's going in depth with the GPD Win 4. He's going to be testing at 60 Hertz, 40 Hertz, battery life, TDP, all kinds of crazy stuff. He loves his benchmarks, so definitely check his videos out. He's got some great content over there, and I highly recommend subscribing to his channel if you're into this kind of stuff. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look video at the GPD Win 4. If you're interested in backing the Indiegogo or maybe just learning more, I'll leave some links down below to their Indiegogo and their official website. But definitely let me know in the comments below what you think about the Win 4. Is this something that you're interested in? Is it too much of a thick boy? Is it too small? Is it not putting out enough power? Are you going to wait for the next rendition of these Ryzen APUs, maybe with RDNA2? I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've got any questions or if there's anything else you want to see running on the Win 4, also leave it down there. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.